All right, welcome back. This is East Coast Adventures with the Dirt and Vert Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Matt.
And we have a special guest with us today, Ron Wireman. Ron, if you don't care, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into running.
Sure. So, man, if I get long-winded here, you guys just stop me or interrupt me or whatever, because when I start talking about running, there's no telling when I'm going to stop. So, so how did I get start running? Well, I grew up in Ohio, so that's where I'm from. I lived out in the country. My parents had a nice acreage out there, and I would go run in the woods, build forts. I was always out. My dad, he told me, he's like, you can use any tool in my garage that you want as long as you put it back when you're done. So I was always out there doing something in the woods, playing in the woods. They had a hard time when I was younger keeping me on the property. I would try to cross the road when I was like 3 or 4 and try to get into the woods. So yeah, so I always was.
I'm just curious what tools you were carrying into the woods.
Well, we had electric cord run out to the fort for many times.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I was like, Ron's building the house.
Yeah, we did. We literally did. When my parents were building their house, we kind of siphoned off some of the supplies and for our fort. So definitely.
That's awesome.
So so I had trails that I had kind of cut through the woods behind our house that I didn't know that I was running, but a lot of times that's what I did. And then in high school, I played all the sports. I went to a small school, so I could basically play any sport that I wanted. If you went out for the team, you're basically going to be on it. So where most of my time went was playing basketball. And I ran track, I played soccer, I played baseball, all kinds of sports. I was always doing something. My parents always had me in sports after school. That's just what I did, and I loved it. So, so as far as running goes, I really like track, but I was never like super good at it. I ran the distance, and I had to do a lot of other events too because we had a small team. So you end up getting a pretty good workout in when you're running the 400, the 800, the 1600, and the 3200 at all the track meets. So I always had the endurance, but never quite the speed.
I think you're pretty fast.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say you don't have the speed. I've seen you run
pretty fast.
Well,
maybe you didn't have the speed back then, but you definitely got it now.
It's relative. I didn't work on it. I was so focused on basketball. That's what I spent 90% of my time doing growing up.
I think that's most, teenagers, basketball or football is life. Running and stuff is just something you do because your coach says you should run when we're not practicing. It will help you.
Hey, that's exactly how our coach did it. My sophomore year, I ran track, and he was the basketball coach. He said you had to run a spring sport. So I ran track. And then the cross-country coach came out and he said, hey, you were good at track. Why don't you come run for us? Okay. So I would go to basketball practice and then cross-country practice, or go to cross-country practice and then basketball practice. Everything was basketball.
Well, my school was so small, we didn't have a cross-country or a track team. I graduated with 42 kids.
Okay, so we're in the same boat because we didn't have a cross-country team either. Until my senior year, my buddy, he lived down the road from me, Matt. He was like, one day he's like, we should start a cross-country team. We had one, our school had one, but this is back in the 70s. So it had been 30 years since we had a cross-country team. So we scraped together some freshmen and basically forced them onto our ragtag team.
Didn't give them a choice.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I loved cross country. I loved basketball my whole life, but that one season of cross country was absolutely incredible. It was my favorite sport, and I only got to do it one year of my senior year. So.
If you create the team, does that make you the captain?
Basically, Well, I happen to also be the fastest on the team, so yeah, basically.
How fast did you run back then?
So, I used to keep track of everything. Even since I was in fourth grade, I would literally have workouts that I designed for myself to go out and play basketball. So I would shoot like 100 free throws. Then I have a half an hour of shooting where I had to make a certain amount of points, and I would keep it all on a spreadsheet on my door. So that was in fourth grade. So I was a little bit, I was motivated, and so by the time I got to high school, it was the same thing. I had certain goals set, but unfortunately, I have no idea where those papers went for cross country. But I remember having them and being like, I want to hit this specific goal. And so my last meet, I ran 16:59. So that was my best time.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
So did you have to like recruit a coach too?
Yeah, we did. We had to do it all ourselves. So like the principal was like, look, you got to find a coach, you got to have this many players, and you have to do all this stuff. So I think our history teacher had ran cross country in college. Like he was kind of like low level, but he was on the team basically. So he was our coach. But he was awesome. He was super great. I remember he took us out to do like hill repeats. And
That's
he'd
awesome.
send us out and we'd go explore and get into nonsense stuff. We didn't always run the route we were supposed to, let's put it that way.
I think
that's a good fun coach. That's what you want.
I think that's how most small schools are. They just try to find somebody to fill the spot. Like, hey, you want to do something for a couple months? Yeah, here you go. You got it. You're a coach now.
Yeah.
I think that's how they recruit some of these people.
It is.
So that was in high school. That was your senior year, cross country, and take us from there now.
Okay, so then I went off to art school in Ohio. Basically stopped any running, like official running. I would go out for runs sporadically, just on my own. I would run around downtown Columbus. They had a nice park. I would go run there a couple times. Yeah, but I didn't really train. I didn't even know how to train, to be honest. I never was taught proper ways. I had no idea what I was doing. But and I didn't do any races or anything like that. I played pickup basketball. That's basically what I did. So graduated, moved down to Tennessee to get my teacher's license, and started teaching down here. So that was like a, I don't know, 7-8 year span where I didn't do anything. All I was doing was artwork, sitting on my butt, getting out of shape, not doing anything. And
well, I mean, I've seen some of your artwork. You're very talented. So
thank
I wouldn't
you.
really say you're sitting on your butt, but you're actually a really good artist. I've seen your work. So
thank you. It's but physically the act of drawing doesn't really keep you in shape for anything. So, and it's very time taking. When I get into something,
like one wrist arm curls, right? Like when you were drawing,
just all in a wrist. Yeah. Good hand-eye coordination. I don't know.
So what brought you to Tennessee?
My wife is from here. So she grew up here. Her family lives here still. My family still lives in Ohio. But yeah, she lived down here, and I came down to visit her a couple times, and I was like, yeah, that's not too bad. And then the school she was going to had a teacher's certificate program, and since I already had since I'd already graduated, I only had to take really a few classes to be able to do that. So I didn't even have to do student teaching. They got me into a school before I was even done. So it worked out really well.
Oh wow, that's good. Yeah, and she brought you to a town that's full of a huge community of running and trail running.
Yeah.
So you got lucky there.
Yeah. So how it really started was the physical ed teacher. We were pretty good friends, and she would have me help her with class sometimes, and I would go run with the kids. And so she's like, you should do the Knoxville half marathon. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll do it. And so I signed up and trained for it, which was basically I did like 1 or 2 runs a week, a few miles. And so I went, did the Knoxville half, which is, if that's your first half marathon, it is not an easy course and not for the faint of heart. And
that was my first full marathon.
Yeah, right. It's a
full
tough
marathon.
one. Yeah, it's a tough one for your first
Ron,
one.
what year was that you did that half marathon?
I think it's 2007.
Okay. And this is after the long break of going to art school.
Yeah.
How'd you do?
So it was like the worst race ever. I was miserable. It rained all morning. And so I'm drenched. You should see the race photos. It's absolutely, I just look like death. I look miserable, like a melting Tyrannosaurus, just with the arms and it's horrible. It was terrible.
Well, he obviously ignited something because we're talking to him now.
Yeah. And he was so miserable. He's like, I got to go do something else.
And when I look at his ultra sign up page, it says 25 trophies. So we're talking to a different runner now. But go ahead. Let's hear the rest now. That bad race.
You hit the nail on the head, my friend.
I guess you kind of got hooked at that point, right?
Yeah. Well, I knew I could do better, and so my whole life, I always wanted to do something. Whenever I did something, I wanted to do the best that I could. And so doing that race and like just absolutely falling apart, I was like, man, I can do so much better than that, And so I spent the next year training for the next one, and slowly learned how to train properly. I started reading books, got on the Runner's World forum. I was big on that, reading all the articles. And of course, when I was growing up in high school, we didn't have internet. So I didn't learn anything about running, and you didn't hear anything about it. The only thing I knew about running was the Olympics. And I just thought you just trained really hard and you got there. Like, I didn't know. I was like,
you're exactly right. There was no internet to look up running form or training plans, or you're figuring it out on your own.
Yeah, or even watch races. Like, I had never seen a marathon race on TV or anything like that. I saw Ironman. That was the one thing, the Kona Ironman, and I loved that. Ever since I was a kid, I was like, that's so cool. They're out there running on the lava and stuff. It's like, that's amazing. So I was always inspired by the Olympics and Ironman and like endurance things. The Prefontaine movies come out, and that when I was a senior in high school. So I had those. And so,
did you grow a mustache?
I still can't grow a mustache. I don't know.
That's what I did. Once I found out who he was, I'm like, I got a mustache and I got long, shaggy hair.
But you know what? You know what? That's the famous words that everybody says, or most people. I mean, there are a few. I guess there are a few that just say, "I'm never running again in my life," and they mean it. But most people, when they do a race like your half marathon, I think I can do better.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just, that's where everything changes. And, people are like, I think I can do better. And every race you start thinking that, and, look at us now, like all of us. I mean, That was me. Like, I signed up for a 50K and it went awful. And like, I swore off running. I was walking those last 3 miles. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. Why would you ever do this? And then the next day I'm laying there with my legs propped up and I'm like, I think I can do better.
That's exactly how it was the first year I did the fort. I did the 6 hours in the fort. 3 loops in, I fell apart, walking and cramping. I'm like, this is stupid. I can't even walk up his hill. I can't even walk. A couple of days later, I'm like, okay, I can do better.
Yep.
I'm going to figure this out. I'm figuring this out. What did I do wrong? And then now look at us.
So you said you trained again for the next year. Did you do the half marathon again next year?
I did. So
when did you step up to the marathon?
The year after. So the next year when I ran the half marathon, I ran 1:30. So.
Oh, wow. And what was the previous year?
150 something, 152, something like that.
Well, you said that was the worst half marathon ever.
It was.
150 is not
It was.
bad at all. That's, I mean, for your very first half marathon, that's pretty good. Like, that's something that people aren't gonna, turn their head at.
I mean it is, but then I look at like the stuff that I'm doing now, and that's an easy run for me, like
Yeah.
that's a jog for me. It's less than a jog. So, I knew, like, I could feel like the distance between where I was and where I should be, I guess. It put it into perspective for me, like, wow. Because I remember walking up the stairs, and part of the reason I wanted to do that race is I was walking up the stairs. We went to a basketball game at my old high school, and I was out of breath walking up the stairs to get to the stands. Like, so, like, aerobically, that was just absolutely terrible fitness-wise.
That's weird, Ron, because how I started running again was I played basketball through school, and then we would have these adult leagues after,
Yep.
a couple years after I graduated. So I played in them for like numerous years. And then they kind of like went away, and then I wanted to be like really jacked. So all I did was eat and lift, and I got up to almost 200 pounds.
How much?
Like, it was like 190. It was almost 200 pounds for me, and I'm little.
Yeah.
And then I go to try to play basketball again. And I couldn't, I'm dying. Like, I'm absolutely dying. I said, well, this is stupid. I can't be doing this because I've loved playing basketball whenever I get a chance. And so then I started 1 mile a day, 2 mile a day, did that for like a week, 2 weeks, and then it's 3 miles a day. And then, it's escalated quickly.
Ron, if you ever like Facebook stalk Matt, it really does look like he lost a whole person.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, his arms are like twice as big as they are.
Really?
Like, all he did was worked out.
That's all I did.
That's amazing.
For like 2 years, it was just lifting, eating. Like, I didn't care what I ate. I was just eating so much and trying to lift as heavy as I could. But it wasn't a clean jacked. It was a sloppy jacked, and it was awful.
But he still has like that weird addiction. He's not lifting now, but his goal is to grow his beard as big as it
Yeah,
will be.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the beard down to the belly button before I trim it. So we'll see how it goes.
So now let's go back to this half marathon. So you run it in 1 hour and 30 minutes. Then you're obviously very happy with your results, I would imagine. That's a 20-minute improvement. You probably realize you can do better and go further.
Yeah, because I think it was a big positive split too. So I already was
awesome.
thinking. I already was thinking, like, oh, there's room there, and by that time I had started really learning how to run mileage and how to do these things. There's so many little things that you learn along the way, and how to develop my training. So I had my training in months out in advance on a calendar.
So when you say that, I have to ask you this question, because I'm sure a lot of people just caught what you said, but you learn a lot of little things. What do you think, is the biggest couple of things that you learned in those 2 half marathons and moving into that marathon for training? Like, I'm sure you learned something that you shouldn't do or should do, or maybe it was more about, distance and how many hours you logged. But to you, what seemed to work and what seemed to help you?
Yeah, for me, it was just learning how to build mileage and be consistent. So consistency was everything. As well as I could have in the beginning, was I would take the summers basically off because I just thought I was out of shape, but it was the humidity and all that stuff. So, thinking back, I was like, man, if I would have just kept running through the summer, I would have been fine, So I think
that's what a lot of people don't realize is, like, especially in Tennessee, the humidity and how much of a difference it plays in your effort and your pace and
it's
your
wild.
heart rate. And, so I can see why you would think that.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't really know. And that, like I said, it's just little things that you learn along the way. But consistency was a big thing. Like Matt was saying, like he started 1 mile a day, 2 mile a day. I sort of did the same thing, where I would go on these streaks. And reading a lot of materials, a lot of running books, really helped. And I looked at what the elite athletes were doing, and it just didn't even compute for me because their paces are so different than what I was able to do and hold. Under 5 minute paces for a marathon I'll never do that, and that's okay. But I can try. I can try to get my time down as low as it can go. But trying to follow them is impossible. So I would say don't follow the elites. Don't do what they do. Do what you need to do for your current fitness and where your goals need to be. Because I would try to overshoot and undershoot, and do these crazy workouts, and it really wasn't where I should have been working out at. So that was two things.
Did you try to take your mileage up slow, or did you take it up fast?
Well, I took it up
Because
fast.
I know with me, my mistake was I took it up way too fast.
Yeah, I did take it up fast, but my body responded. I never really got injured, so that wasn't a big problem when I was doing road races, and I didn't get injured that much. Even though I was running 100 miles a week eventually, it was a slow enough build over those first 2 or 3 years where I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. Like when I planned out my mileage, I knew each week had to be a certain amount, and then I just tried to increase it over time. So it built naturally, but it was a lot. So I was putting in a lot of miles, a lot more than your weekend warrior or whatever.
Yeah. So, okay, so now we're let's see what we're saying. 2007 was your first half marathon. Then 2008 you did the half marathon again.
Yep.
Knock about 20 something minutes off your time. You do the half marathon or the full marathon. Then that puts you at 2010. So now at this point you've completely caught the running bug. You're in it. You're always at this point, like you said, you're building training plans. When did you decide, oh, I think I can go further?
Like further than the marathon? Because
yes.
I didn't want to for a long time. I really didn't. I remember, just I wanted to get as fast as I could, and I wanted to win marathons. That was one of my goals, was to win a marathon, to win a half marathon. I wanted to run Badwater. I had all these goals that just slowly, came over time. The Badwater one was like way down the line. That was like something like, okay, when I'm retired, I'll go. That kind of, that wasn't an early thing. But I had saw the documentary and was really intrigued by it. So, but I wanted to, get some wins, basically, and I was able to do that just through consistent training, basically. And the right people have to show up. So
yeah. I mean, that's true. What was your first marathon you won?
Trying to think. Well, I'll go off on a tangent here, but there's a lot of races where I was in the lead, and the bike leads would take me in the wrong direction. So that was a big issue for me.
I have heard that happen in several races. I won't mention one race that I know for sure it's happened multiple times, but yeah, I've heard that.
And I'm like, when I'm running, I don't even know where I'm at half the time. I wouldn't know turn left or right, unless it's completely marked for me. I'm gonna take the wrong turn almost always. It's just I'm hopeless when it comes to that. But the first one was the Seven Bridges Marathon. And I think that would have been the best marathon that I ran, because I was running 6-minute pace for the first 10K, and I was feeling amazing. We get to about the 10-mile, 12-mile point, and the course lollipops. So you can take a right or a left the bike lead took us right. We were supposed to take a left. So we did the lollipop in reverse. So we covered the full distance. We just did it backwards. And so we're coming back, and I am at the aid station. They're like, you're not supposed to be here yet. And I'm like, well, I'm here. And so I'm stopped. I'm looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. And they're like, well, just keep going. And so I do, and I'm still running fast, and then I would drop the hammer after I would stop for, 30 seconds or whatever, and run to the next one. And then there's the cops there, directing traffic, and we're asking them where we're supposed to go. The guy in second, he catches up to me every single time. So I would stop, ask for directions, and then he would come up, and then he would until we figured it out. And they're like, okay, we'll keep going. And so that happened at least twice, I think 2 or 3 minutes. And I think I still ran like 2:50, something like that. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we all got
that's
disqualified.
great.
We all got disqualified. All the top 10.
No.
So the one race where I was in the lead and it was just basically I could have just brought it home. Ended up not counting. So yeah, and then so that was the first time. Then another.
That bike lead was never asked to be the bike lead ever again.
Yeah,
I was thinking back, and the very first turn he took us in the wrong direction. Like we started off and we were supposed to go right. He took us left. And I remember we all had to go real quick. I didn't remember until like they brought it up, and I was like, "Wait, we started off the race like that." So it was kind of.
So, how mad did you get? Like, I'd be if that was like my first marathon. I was trying to win, and I was leading it, and I found out that the bike lead took me the wrong way. I would be so disheartened. Like it would just. How'd you feel?
It was. I wrote a whole thing on it. I wrote a whole race report, and I was like complaining to all the people because I was on the Runner's World, the sub-3. We had a sub-3 forum, and you could just post whatever. And so everybody was following my training, like they knew that I was, because I was trying to run 2:45. That was my A goal, and so I wrote the whole race report, and a lot of people were saying they didn't believe me, and it just was this whole thing. But for me, I ran a great race, so I can't really. And technically, I crossed the line first, whatever that means, and I know where my capability was. And it's kind of funny because it kind of put me off of doing marathons after that. I was like, I don't really know if I want to keep doing this, but at that point I would already, put so much invested time, and I loved running. So I wasn't going to just stop just because I loved it so much. But it put me off of, like, I don't know, trying to go for maximum effort towards winning. So I wanted to just race to have fun.
So did you ever get your official win?
In a marathon, I'm not sure. Because I ran a lot of marathons, and it was kind of hard to remember them all. But I'm not that fast. Like I'm not fast enough where I can run like a 2:30. That can pretty much win you a lot of marathons. But being in the 2:50, 2:48 range, you really have to be in a smaller marathon. But I mean, Damn Yeti technically they have a marathon as part of the 50K. So technically I've won that twice, I guess. But after that race, it wasn't a goal for me anymore. You know what I mean? Because I already knew that I could do that, and then it just became more about time and racing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when did you flip the switch to ultras?
So,
I mean, I see your first race here as far as the pistol ultra.
I think I decided to do the pistol. Yeah, and it was a local race, so I was like, okay, well, local. I'll just train for this. My training was going really well. I was doing back-to-back long runs and stuff like that, so I figured I could probably do 100K.
Pistol 100K was your first race?
Yeah, first ultra.
That you won?
Yeah, yes.
In 8 hours and 52 minutes. Okay. So let's take a step back then. So you have Seven Bridges Marathon where the bike lead takes you in the wrong direction. I'm sure somewhere between there to here you're still upset about that. But at what point did you decide to change? Did you have to change your training to train for this 100K? Like, at what point did you flip that switch to say, I wanted to do ultra?
It was just, I looked at my training and I was just crushing mileage. Like, I was running 120 miles a week, no problem. Putting in long runs, running marathons on the weekends as part of my training. So my mileage had just gotten to a point where I was like, well, if I can translate this over into ultras, then I can probably do pretty good, because it's generally a slower pace. So I'm like, well, I can tone back my pace and I can run forever. So, I was like, well, let's try it. See what happens.
Well, you definitely did it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome, because the pistol is not your, it's not your small, and I don't know what it was back in 2014, but, it's not a small race. It's not, your typical, local 50K that may have 50, 75 people. I mean, that race has been, hundreds of runners in it. And I don't know what it was at this point. Like, I didn't click on it to see, but to get first place in that, it's a pretty large race. Did you have someone did you have someone you were competing with, or did you basically lead the race the whole time?
There were a few guys in the beginning, and I had looked at the course record before the race, but that wasn't really my goal. But I wanted to have an idea of maybe what was possible. I think the record before that was like 9:10, maybe something. It was just around 9 hours. The reason I found out was because when I was running, the guy who had the course record was running with me at the beginning, and we were just talking about it. So he's like, yeah, I won this race last year, blah, blah, blah. And so we're cruising along 7:30 pace for the first marathon. And that was pretty easy for me at the time. So, like, okay, well, I'll just hold this as long as I possibly can. And it was that's a tough course. It's a tough race because it's on the greenway, but there's a lot of little rollers and little spiky hills that can cut your legs out from under you if you're not trained and not ready for it.
So I would imagine you go from half marathon to marathon to, okay, I'm just going to run 2 marathons. I'm going to do 100K.
Yeah.
No big deal. And then I'm going to win it.
And break the course.
Yeah. So
did you crash in that race? Like, when did you have a low point? And if you did, do you remember like where it was and how it happened? Because I would imagine with that distance, you probably hit a whole new low you've probably never experienced running 100K like that.
Honestly, it wasn't. Like, my training was just so solid before that race that it was just like being out on a long run. And I just got into a comfort zone and just held that pretty much the whole time. The wind was tough, and the hills were tough, and the mileage you get sore after 30, 40 miles. Regardless of how fit you are, that's just going to happen. So, I mean, there was like that kind of discomfort, but I finished the race strong. I didn't really fall off or anything. So.
Well, you've definitely got an awesome track record. I mean, as far as your achievements and your accomplishments since you turned into an ultra runner. And I mean, and there's very few people that will probably ever talk to on this podcast that A, ran this race, and B, podiumed it.
Oh yeah.
So you do 200Ks, it looks like. In 2014 and 2015, you do Pistol Ultra, and you win it back-to-back years, which is impressive. And you shave 50 minutes off your time, roughly. And then you decide to do Thunder Rock 100. And some of our listeners would probably never even heard of Thunder Rock 100 because it was a race that lasted, 3 or 4 years in the Cherokee National Forest. And you came in second place overall. And when I looked this race up, which me and Matt, we're very familiar with Thunder Rock because we're currently working on a course that runs through some of this area.
It's a beautiful area, and that was an awesome race. So I am looking forward to whatever you guys put together and being a part of it.
Awesome.
Well, it's definitely going to be 100-miler.
Yeah, I love it.
But the thing that I noticed about Thunder Rock is there's some big names that have ran this race. And one of them that I saw was David Goggins, and he DNF'd it. And then I see Ron Wireman podiums it, second place, in 21 hours. That's your first 100-miler. That's pretty impressive. So you've done marathons. Obviously, the Pistol 100 is nothing but road as well. The 100. No, I know you said that you loved, cross country when you were in high school and stuff, but you obviously have done nothing but ran on roads and trained on roads, is what I would imagine if you've been doing marathons and the Pistol. Why decide to go do a 100-mile trail run? And what did you do different on this? Because so far, you've podiumed every ultra you've done since you've started.
I know, right? Yeah, that's just how I roll, I guess. The thing that I tried to do in my training was do the thing that scares you. And so I'd never really even ran a lot of trails at that time. I don't even know if I had ran many trails at all. I'd have to look at my races to see how many trail races I'd done, but it couldn't have been many before that one. Maybe Big South Fork, I might have ran that before then. So I was
I see you got third place.
Okay, so yeah, so I thanks.
But that's 17 miles. That's not a 100-mile trail run. Like, this is a big difference. Like, even 100K on the road is not a 100-mile trail run. That is a big difference.
It is.
So did you try to spend more time on the trails? Did you practice more long runs or back-to-back long runs? Or did you just keep doing what you were doing?
That year I was like, I'm going to do everything. So I had watched Unbreakable, and that's what I was like, nope, I'm going to do a mountain ultra, and regardless, I'm just going to do it. But I was training for Boston too. I did Boston the month before Thunder Rock. So I did Boston, really? Thunder Rock, and then I had signed up for more ultras later in the year. That's my first year into 100-mile races. I think I tried to do 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah, I see. So let's see. I see Pistol 100K, first place. Thunder Rock 100-miler. So that was in January. Thunder Rock 100-miler in May, second place. Dirt Circuit, which is now an East Coast Adventures race, in 2015. So that was in October, first place. And then looks like you took a little break after that and jumped in.
That was a training run. Dirt Circuit was a training run for Pinhoti, but I didn't get to run Pinhoti because I actually injured myself at Dirt Circuit. So,
did you really?
Yeah, it was just like I had hurt my Achilles. My shoe kept coming down on my Achilles because I was getting tired. I just had hit that spot like 2 or 3 times, and it actually damaged my Achilles going into. So kind of ruined Pinhoti. But I would have done that year for sure.
Well, you went Thunder Rock and Dirt Circuit back to back. And you podiumed both of those as well. So 2015 is a huge year for you. You win, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Well, you podium all the races that you run in 2015. But I still have to go back and ask this question because this is something that always intrigues me, and that is, in the 100-miler or that 24-hour at Dirt Circuit, at some point, every runner experiences this terrible low of something that you've never went through. And I know you didn't experience it at Pistol at this point because it's 100K, but now you've went almost a whole day running an ultra in the woods. And I would imagine being in second place or first place, whatever place you were in at the time in Thunder Rock, you were probably by yourself.
Yep.
which is a little different as well from pistol, because at least at pistol you see things. So how did you handle that, and like how did you come out of that low, and what did you do?
Yeah, so Thunder Rock was first of all, it was the longest that I'd ever ran at one time. So that right there is one thing. But I also was just running crazy. So I was just bombing every downhill from the beginning. Like I didn't even care. It's like I'm just gonna run this thing hard, and whatever happens, happens. So I think I was leading for a good majority of the first half of the race, just running crazy. And I remember fighting off deer flies and stuff. It was raining off and on, but I was feeling okay until about 50 miles in. And I remember getting to the 50-mile aid station, and I was low, like you said. Like I had ran, that was the farthest I'd ran on trails with elevation, and now it's getting dark. I've fought off dogs, I fought off flies. It was a time. And so I get to the aid station, and I'm 50 miles in, and I'm like, I'm only halfway. There's no way I can do this. Like I don't even think I can do this, because I'm only halfway done, and I'm already at the edge here. And
because 50 miles is a long ways to think about when you're in a low spot like that, and you've never experienced that. So you're sitting there at this aid station contemplating life choices and the decisions you've made and why you've ran every downhill. But
right.
But you obviously pulled it back together. So what did you do?
I think I had some bacon wrapped pickles and pizza, and then I was like a new man, and I just took off again, flicked on my headlight, took off out of the aid station, made it another 12 miles before I started regretting my life again. But I remember we going up this climb, and it's one of the biggest climbs of the course, and it's 12, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, sometime in there. Been running for hours, I have no idea, going up this huge mountain, just crunching leaves and just feeling miserable. And like I'm getting passed, people are passing me. Well, actually, the leader of the race, that's where he caught me, was on that climb, and it was Dave, I think. I can't remember his last name right now, but awesome runner. I think he has a SCAR record, or had it at one point. But he comes up with his pacer.
David Worth.
Yes, yeah, awesome dude. He comes up with his pacer, and he's like, because I'm just like hauled over on the side of the trail, just sitting there in a daze. And they're like, "Do you need anything? Can we do something for you?" And so they literally gave me some water, like refilled my water bottle, and tried to help me. And I was like, "Just go, just go." So they took off, and at that point, I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna keep walking here. There's nowhere else to go." So, because on that course, you're out in the, you're up in the mountains. There's
nowhere.
Yeah, there's nobody's coming to save you.
Nope.
You just keep going. So I get up to the top of this climb, top of the mountain, and I just look up at the stars, just a beautiful night, the wind's blowing, and I was dead tired. I was like, I'm just going to go sleep. I'm tired. So I lay down there just in the leaves on the side of the trail. I'm like, I'm just going to sleep here, and hopefully somebody comes by and grabs me, because I don't know. This is it. Like
Ron's curled up in the fetal position in the middle of the woods at night.
I think a lot of us have felt that way on those long 24 hours or stuff like that.
You know what I'm more impressed by? Knowing this story, and that he finished second.
He'll finish second place.
Like, what did someone do? Give you a baby bottle and revive you? I mean, it's
right. Because I was waiting for somebody, and I'm laying there, and it feels like I've been sleeping for an hour. and it probably was. It was probably like 5 minutes. I don't even know. I have no idea because I wasn't looking at my watch or anything. I didn't care. And so I'm like, somebody's got to come along sooner or later. Like somebody's gonna come, and they never did. So if I woke back up and I'm like, well, nobody's coming. I guess I'll start walking again. And so so I start walking up the next mountain, and a couple more runners pass me, zip by, zoom zoom, and I'm just absolutely, have nothing. I get up to the next aid station. I think at the time the pistol guys ran that station. So it's somewhere 70 miles in, and get some food, hang out there for a minute, and I'm like, okay, well, here, just keep running. So took off again and hit this downhill on a Jeep road, and all of a sudden I just felt good and just started bombing hills again. And so just bombed that whole, it's like a 2 mile stretch just downhill. And I think I caught both the guys that passed me earlier. And so passed them, said hello, just kept going. My quads were absolutely gone. So my legs were shredded. And I didn't even care. I'm like, well, they're already hurting. So what does it matter? And just ran even faster all the way down, crossed the road, hit the aid station. I grabbed some energy drink, drank that, grabbed some food, up to the next mountain. So up the next mountain climb.
And when you're 80 plus miles in, even if your legs are hurting, you're still like, it doesn't matter. I'm going. Like if you're that far, you're committed at that point.
Definitely.
And
exactly.
So you just drop the hammer and you catch all the way back up to right behind first place.
Yep. Yeah. So
that's pretty impressive for your very first 100-miler, and on a course that some still consider one of the hardest courses around here. The Thunder Rock course was very hard.
We ran a lot of these trails in that section, doing all this stuff, and it's not easy. Like the first time we went up there and ran one of these sections, we're like, "Whoa, this is different than what we've been training on." And it's climbing, just lots and lots of climbing.
Mm-hmm. It's a ton of climbing, yeah. And because I think there was like 14, maybe 15,000 feet elevation in that race, so definitely up there. It was a good amount.
Well, that's almost.
Well, I'm going to quit counting at this point, but just looking at the race that you did
and a lot of
in
DNFs.
2015, 51 finished. And I just stopped counting at 50 DNFs. So I don't know how many people DNF, but I just quit because I don't want to count anymore. But that's impressive for your very first 100-miler. And some of these DNFs I'm seeing, they're really talented runners. So to walk in there for your first 100-miler, you took a 1-hour nap and decided to run again and catch everybody. But the fact that you kept going is really awesome. That's what's really cool, is that you hit that low spot. Some people, can't ever get out of that low spot. And, some people still struggle to finish their first 100-miler. And with that being said, what advice could you give them as far as like trying to keep going? And because sometimes we can't get out of our own head. And I love the fact that you said, when I say, how did you get out of the low spot? And you said bacon and pickles. Because, a lot of times when we get into those low spots, sometimes it's just nutrition.
Yep.
It's all in our head. We've made up this story. Everything's terrible. Oh, I'm not going to finish this race. And you can drink some Tailwind or some Scratch and eat a candy bar or, some Lay's potato chips or, which sounds amazing,
some fried
in a race, bacon wrapped around pickles. But what advice could you give these, some of these newer runners that are trying to finish their first 100-miler?
So a big thing for me was just the consistency of mileage, of having a streak. So I have a run streak going now for 4 years, at least a mile outdoors every day. So getting out, but at the time I was doing like 3 or 5 miles. When you have something like that to fall back on, it sort of eliminates some of those excuses. Because you're like, no, I can do this, or I can just do 3 more miles. You know what I mean? Because I do it every day. So it helps. It's a mental game. So if you can train your mind mentally every day on those 3 miles, that's what that can be the difference. Because when you're tired at home and you gotta, cook dinner or, do this work or whatever it is, you can make that excuse like, I don't really need to run today. I'll just, it doesn't really matter. But if you get past that and you get out the door and you put in those miles and you put in the work, you come back, then whenever you get in the race and those things come up, like, I can do this, like, it's just getting out the door. It's just going that little bit more.
I mean, that is awesome advice, because we as a culture, as a community, struggle to make some of our things that we want to be a priority. And if you're going to train for a 100-miler, or you're going to train for a 50-miler, or even a marathon training that Matt's about to, you have to make it a priority. And because you don't feel good, that's different than being sick or injured, but because you don't feel good or you don't feel like you have time, are you making it a priority? Because it's real easy to say, I'm not going to run today. And then next week, I'm not going to run next week. And then I'm not going to run. Okay, well, I'm going to start back on Saturday. And then race day's here and you're upset because you either A, didn't get the time you want, or B, you don't finish.
Yep.
But don't be upset about the results you didn't earn. And that's the thing, is like, if we're not going to make it a priority, then we shouldn't have an expectation on ourselves to go in. So I love exactly what you said. You put in the work. You obviously have made it a priority. I mean, I'm looking at your race results, man, and they're just absolutely amazing. I mean, all I see down through here is podiums. And I mean, I'm going to go through a little bit of your list here, just because I want people to see and hear what you've done. But like, I think it's just amazing. Like, you come back, you do Tunnel Hill, you done Henson Lake 24-hour, you're second place. You do Tunnel Hill 100, you're fourth place. Fontainebleau 50-miler 5th place. Let's skip up a few years here now, and let's go to Damn Yeti 50K. This is in 2021. First place. Bob's Big Timber Backyard. So here's a good one to give us some stories on. So you've conquered all these 50Ks, 100Ks, 100-milers at this point. And then in 2021, you decide to do a last man standing, and you win it. And I'm pretty sure this qualifies you, because that's a golden ticket race, if I remember, or whatever we want to call it at this point. Maybe it's silver ticket now. I think back then it might have been gold. I don't know. But anyways, you obviously get to go to Biggs and compete in that backyard ultra, but you go into Bob's and you finish first place. You go 179 miles. Is that the longest distance you've ever ran?
Yes. In one go, yeah, for sure.
Okay. And if I recall, Bob's is extremely hot.
That year it was absolutely awesome. It was great weather that year. So I definitely wasn't hot. It was hot the next year. So it can be, because it's in August. So you can, in Ohio, it can go either way. So you can have it be warm, or you can have it be seasonable. Like, just kind of, it was a little warm, but it definitely wasn't hot. Especially when you live in Tennessee. It's definitely not hot.
So you're saying it wasn't Fort Frenzy hot?
Yeah, it might have been a shade below that.
So I know some people that ran.
The second year of Bob's, it was Fort Frenzy hot. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Yes.
Well, I know some people that ran Bob's the year that you ran it. And because that was actually, I think that might have been the first year I'd done my first backyard in Michigan.
Yes.
And I was just a few minutes before you. And but I remember someone telling me when you won, I was like, Ron won. I was like, that's awesome. And they're like, yeah, we didn't think he was going to. because he was, and if I remember right, it's this race, but they said you got sick, you were throwing up, you were about to quit, or you had a really bad lap. And then somehow, this was like around mile 150, and they said somehow you brought it back and turned it back on. And I don't, so obviously you didn't get to crawl up in the fetal position and take a nap like you did at Thunder Rock. So tell us about this low point and what you did and how you fought out of it.
Well, just thinking back to that race it's wild because, you have to dig deep in a backyard. You really do, because you're limited on time. And so, you have to be on point with everything, but mostly you just have to have just that will to keep going. And, I watched the backyard this year, and you can just tell by the things people are saying when they're gonna stop. Just the words coming out of their mouth, even if they don't realize they're saying it. Like, I was watching, I'm like, oh, he's gonna drop out in the next lap, and then there you go. And it's like, you can just tell. There's just certain things you see. But for Bob's, I was going in on good training. I'd been doing 8 miles a day for a year and a half, so I knew I had, like, consistency was there. My training was going okay. I was getting in long runs. So physically, I thought, we'll be all right. My parents were really the reason I was able to keep doing that race. They crewed me, and they did an awesome job. They were just incredible. They had everything that I needed when I came in, and people from the race too. That race is it's like a family event. It's so great. They've got full stocked aid station there. Any runners can use. So I had anything that I needed. So that definitely helped get me farther than I would have just trying to do it solo like I usually do at most of my races. But I was running through the night, and that first night was horrible because I was so tired. That's one of my things. Like, whenever I do these longer races, 24 hours, whatever, I'll hit a period of time where I'm just sleepy. Like, I just, like, my eyes just want to close. I just want to sleep. And so I had a hard time that first night with just being tired out on the trail. I'll start weaving around, sleep running. I'll just be running, and then I'll wake up like, oh, okay, well, I fell asleep there for a minute. Okay, well, so that was a really, really difficult night. My dad always gives me stuff about it, like, you weren't gonna wake up. It's like, yeah, I was tired. So that first night was tough. I remember that. And then the morning loop came around. So morning loop, sun's back out. We go back to the trails. They do a gravel road at night there. So the night course is a gravel road with a really steep climb to start off, and then it flattens out, comes back. So I was kind of looking forward to getting back on the trail, just to mix it back up. And the first lap on lap 25, I sprained my knee. So I'm coming down one of the turns. There's a lot of switchbacks and small little hills and climbs. There's about 400 some feet of gain on the day loop, so it's not an easy loop. Bob's is a tough course. It is. If you're looking for a fast, I'm just gonna knock out a PR here, it's probably not the course to do it on. But so I sprained my knee coming down one of those ravines, and it just felt like somebody had taken an ice pick and just jammed it right in the side of my knee. And I run through a lot of pain. Like, when you run so much, you learn the good pains, the bad pains. Like, an ache is different than soreness, is different than, a cramp, which is, there's all these little pains. This was a bad pain. This was you should probably stop right now pain. So I hobbled my way into the aid station. This is the first day loop. It's the very first one. And I just sit in the chair. I'm like, I look at, my parents. I'm like, I think I need to stop. Like, my knee is injured. Like, I'm literally injured. And, basically, I just prayed my way out of it because I just asked the Lord for strength and gritted my teeth, started on the next loop because I wasn't going to quit in the in the interloopal period. That was one thing I was not going to do. I was going to at least time out on the loop, whatever that meant. So I was like, if I have to hobble my way and walk as fast as I can, then that's what I'm going to do until I can't anymore. So I get up, put on my poker face, get up to the line, and here we go. Hobble my way down the first hill and out onto the trails, and just kept struggling through it. It was a lot of pain. I was hurting for most of that day. Just my knee was just really, really bad. But it had certain times where it would hurt and then it wouldn't. So I had a few laps there where I kind of maybe I just forgot about it. Oh, we got a friend.
So you did that at like, I guess 25 hours. You're 104, 105 miles in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You dealt with that the rest of the day, and then obviously from what I heard, around mile 150ish, you had a huge crash too. So you got the knee problem and that, and you somehow still managed to come back and win this race.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, every lap after that just felt like the same. I was like, this is just what I do. I just go out, I do this loop regardless of what I feel like or what's going on, and I just went to a different place. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember hardly any of the day. I don't remember until I hit the night loop. It
becomes a job.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, that's my job. And I remember Becca and John crewed me at Ode to Laz that year, and after 30 loops, it was just like, you're kind of out of it. And especially when, that's the longest I'd ever went, and, I'm still going. And I just remember, like, I'd come through and John's like, how we doing? I was like, doing my job. That's all I'd say. And he's like, and, and it was 50-minute loops. That was my job, and that's all I could think about at that time. And, I get what you're saying. It's something that you don't really think about at that point. You're almost like a robot. Yep. Like you hear that whistle and you're like, here we go.
Yeah. So at one point I was like, this is just what I'm made to do. This is what I do. Is out running the loop, putting in the time. And that second night was awesome. Once we started on the night loop, I was ready to go. Once I hit that gravel, I was ready to run again. I could move faster on the gravel than I could on the trails. So
yeah.
Okay, so now let's move on. We're talking that. So Bob's was in 2021 and 2022. We just continue on with all of Ron's podiums here. Damn Yeti 50K. He did 55K. He was first place, 3:39. He also won the Yeti Spaghetti Marathon.
So that's part of the 50K.
Yeah, that's cool. That's the Boston Marathon qualifier, right?
Yeah.
And he got it 2:48. So that's really good.
Pretty fast.
6 days in the Dome, second place, 24 hours. Then back to Bob's, and looks like that the 2022 year with heat kind of got you a little bit. And then move on to the Tennessee Mile, first place, 24 hours, which that little mountain, it's tough.
It's rough.
Yeah, that's
Becca and John had a tough nugget there. That's a hard race.
Hey, he was so hard for him last year. I think he's going back.
But he did, 71 miles in 24 hours. Man, that is a lot of elevation. It's what, 300 something feet per mile?
Well, it was 18 when I did 64.
So, I mean, that's a ton of elevation. That's
a good
awesome.
Workout. Yeah,
I bet the quads were dying after that.
Holy moly. Yeah. I don't even know if there was anything left. That was a tough race, but what got me there was just being cold, and I had developed a heel issue before that race in the summer, after the dome. I think I got it at the dome. I think that's when my heel started acting up. I had it ended up being heel bursitis. So it was super painful every time I would try to run. And so my training basically just fell off after the dome. But I figured I had already wanted to do the Tennessee Mile, and I was like, well, we ain't gonna be running much there, and it's all gonna be basically hiking. So I was like, well, I'll just go ahead and do it and see what I can get.
And how much hiking did you actually do?
Oh my gosh, so much.
It's hard to run much on that course. I mean,
if you run those uphills, you're just canceling yourself out.
And when you run the downhill, it eventually just wears you down.
The downhills,
run the downhill to make any time.
That's where they got me at the last minute standing last year. I was climbing good.
Yeah.
But going down that, my quads and my knees were hurting so bad, and I couldn't make up any time.
Yeah, the downhill is worse than the uphill, really. In my opinion.
It's bad. In that first year, I watched Luke do it, and then by Luke was sprinting down the downhills. He had them big old Hoka shoes on, the ones with the look like an air mattress on the back, and he was just flying. It's crazy.
So that makes sense if you hurt your heel, because you took like a 6-month break after this race.
Yeah. I basically pretty much stopped running after that race entirely.
Yeah, it looks like you come back and did Merrill's Mile. That must have been like it was a 24-hour race. Looks like you just come out to kind of see what you felt like and could do, because you only ran like 39 or 40 miles.
No, that race, what happened was
there must be more of this.
No, it's completely out of my control, but it was a tornado came through and blew our tents away and destroyed a bunch of stuff. Hit the timing.
That's the one. Cindy was at as well.
Oh wow!
Cindy bumped down. I think she was supposed to do a 20. I think she bumped down. That was this year. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what you can do for Mother Nature.
Yeah, that was the first tornado of the year for 2023. So
then you leave Merrill's Mile and you come to our race in August, and you do the 3-hour, which it's 278 degrees outside, and you
100% humidity.
And in 3 hours you run 21 miles on a course that has roughly almost 400 feet of elevation gain in a 3.5 mile loop, and you won it. I missed this because I was out there running the 6-hour myself. This is the first time I ever got to run my own race. And I just remember when I finished my last lap, finally in the 6-hour race, someone said, Ron got really sick. And then as I found out more, like, I don't know. I feel like this is like a superpower, Ron. I don't know many people that can almost run themselves unconscious on a trail. I mean, that literally has to be a superpower, because you were so far ahead in the 3-hour. I think you'd already lapped everybody.
Yeah.
And you didn't finish the lap though, right? Like you kind of stopped on the side of a tree.
Yeah, multiple times. Stopped to throw up, and I stopped to just lean against a tree. Yeah.
So we had one guy on the other side of the trail on I guess the right side, opposite side. So I went out there to help him. It was Jeff. He was pretty gone. Mm-hmm. And then Melinda catches up to us down there, and she's like, Matt, Ron's not good. Ron's not good. He's laid up on a tree throwing up. She goes, I'm pretty sure she said that she helped you, she got you back to and he was not good.
No, I was not.
And here's the thing that I love. Like, this is what I mean. This is ultra runners and suffering, and sometimes how ridiculous we are. You didn't have to go back out, but you did. You didn't have to go back out and run another lap, but you did. And I mean, you could have stayed out there on the side of that tree for the next day and still won the race, because you had already lapped the entire field, but you went. And you pushed yourself to the point to where you got so sick. I mean, guys, when he crossed the finish line, he was so out of it, he just laid on the side of the road there and puked. But he ended up finishing his lap. He carried himself through, and I mean, he ran 21 miles in 3 hours, which doesn't sound amazing until you've been on this course and you've ran it. I mean, it is a very hard course because of the time of year, because of the humidity. It's middle of summer.
It's tough.
And Ron pushed himself to the point to where, I mean, I don't even, you probably don't even remember much of that last lap, do you?
Oh, I do, because I was puking so much.
I remember before you went out on your last lap, you sat over there on that little stool, and you were just covering yourself with that ice water.
Oh yeah,
just constant. And I was asking like, "Hey, dude, what do you need? You need this, you need this." And who was there with you? Is that your wife?
My wife, yeah.
Okay, so we're standing over at the finish line, and you were doing 25-minute laps, 25, 27 minutes during that time, those first 2 or 3, and then you went out after you were, you look bad. You look bad.
That was bad. No, it was bad, and I knew it was bad.
And then I looked over to your wife, and I'm like, "He hasn't came in yet?" She's like, "No." And then 10 minutes would go by, and I'm like, "He still hasn't came in?" She's like, "No." And then I'm pretty sure at one point I looked at her, and she goes, "I'm getting worried." And I'm like, well, there's a lot of runners out here, so there's somebody, because it's like 100-something people. They're going to find him, and then that happened where I ran to Jeff, and then I didn't see you finish or anything, but yeah, Melinda said it was bad.
So Ron, what kind of mindset do you have to push yourself to the point that, like, I want to know, like, what was going through your head for you to say, I'm going to run another lap? And then, I mean, you're standing on the side of the trail puking. You can barely even function. You're obviously super dehydrated. I mean, it was so hot that day that even I was running slower because I was doing 6 hours, but I was even still to the point of like dehydration. But what was going through your head, and how in the world did you even talk yourself into doing another lap?
The fact that I had time left, that was all I needed.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's good.
I love it. I mean, that's unfortunately that's where we kind of get to as ultra runners, is we want to push ourselves.
Yep.
That's kind of the point that we do this, is to find our limit. And just because you DNF a race or you time out in a backyard ultra, that doesn't necessarily, most of the time you've not found your limit. You gave in, and that's only going to make you stronger. So, when you get caught up in this moment of, oh, this is, I've DNF'd 3 100 milers, I'm never going to finish one. No, you should be learning something from every one of those races. And, I mean, just like this 3-hour race, you ran 100-mile races, you ran 24-hour race, you ran for, a day and a half at Bob's. And this 3-hour race about took you out in 3 hours, and I mean, that's the thing, is like every race is a different story. It's a different learning. It's a different experience, and it makes you stronger. And man, I love the fact that you left it all out there in a 3-hour race. Like, you went to win this thing and to own it, and you didn't give in, you didn't give up, and you didn't care that you were already in first place. You're like, I'm going. I've got this. Love it.
I was thinking about this earlier today because, I was thinking about the things in my life that made me that way, like that made me competitive. I played basketball, but my cousin played basketball. She was really good. Her team was undefeated when she was a junior, and they won every game. They just destroyed every team that they played by 20, 30, 50 points. It was awesome. And we were there for almost every game. Every game that we could go to, we went. So they go to state championship, and they're playing another undefeated team for the championship. So it gets down to, there's like 10 seconds left in the game. They're down by 3 points. And, they get the ball after a free throw. They got to throw it in. So they throw it in, 5, 4, 3. My cousin gets the ball at half court, shoots it. Ball goes up in the air, 2, 1, and then bam, she hits the shot right at the buzzer. Ties up the game at the state championship. So being there, seeing that just like, was incredible. Like our side went crazy, their side all sat down, all at the same time. And they went on to win the state championship. And then the next year, they did the same thing. They went undefeated, won the state championship again. So, just seeing that and how they played, just how they never gave up. Even if they were ahead, they were still just going to, absolutely play until they couldn't play anymore. If they scored 40 more points than the other team, so be it. But they never backed down. And so I grew up with that kind of thing and just ingrained in me, I guess. There's just so many things I think about. When I was in 4th grade, I loved playing basketball. So I'm walking into school. I've got my basketball. I'm 4'0", and one of the teachers was like, isn't that ball a little big for you? And I was like, nope, sure isn't. Went on.
But that's the draw to me for running, and I don't know if it's the same for you all, but it's the fact that it's a battle with me, and any day can be bad, any day can be great, but I really look forward to the days, just like no business this year. It didn't go my way, and trying to figure out a way. Yeah, you're shaking your head. You know what I'm talking about. Me and you, neither one had a good day at no business. We did not. But it's the fact that just like, your cousin making that shot, I mean, it's up to you. You can pull the plug at mile 10. You can pull the plug at mile 50. You can pull the plug at mile 80. It's up to you. And you can either take that shot and try to finish what you started, or you can live the next day thinking about why you didn't even try. And that's the thing that we all struggle with. And that's the thing it continues to push me. And I hope it's pushing a lot of people. And that's the fact that you're trying to be the best version of you every day. Yep. And every day looks completely different. Like, you may have a great day on Monday, and Wednesday may be the worst run you've ever had in your entire life this year, and that's where we just have to sit back and say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get past this day. I'm still going to shoot my shot. I'm still going to send it. I'm going to go back out here tomorrow and try again. And that's the same thing in a race. And I think we forget that sometimes when the race doesn't go our way. Getting an injury, that's different. But when you're in a race and you've got a low point, and a backyard is a perfect example. You can be the best runner in a field. Best runner. Because I guarantee you, out there at Bob's, you probably weren't the best backyard runner. That was your very first one. You had no idea. But you probably weren't the guy that was picked to win. You weren't like.
No, I wasn't. Because I watched. There's another podcast. The Ohio, I can't remember, Ridge Runners maybe, and I watched that because my dad was like, you were on there, and I was like, I was not on there, but they were talking about the top runners, his predictions, and I think I was predicted to be like 4th or 5th or something. Like, this guy, he's kind of fast, but he never really done a backyard, and what's that? But I didn't hear this until after the race. But
you know what? You did not give in. You hurt your knee at mile 100, 105 right in there. You got really sick at mile 150. But you kept pushing, and you kept trying, and you kept moving forward. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to just get through that moment. And we forget that so much, that moment you're feeling right now is not how you're going to feel in 30 minutes. It's not going to how you're going to feel in an hour. But what you feel tomorrow when you quit, that sticks with you. And like, you have figured out that, Ron, like, you have figured out how to push yourself through that. I saw it at the fort. I didn't get to see it physically, but I saw it when we were running together, and I could see it on your face. You did not feel good, but man, you were still just driving your knees forward, and you were pushing through that trail because you had a goal, and you were going to hit that goal, and I think you did. But that's something that we're all kind of fighting for, and we're all trying to find. And every race is different. And me and you, neither one found it at No Business. We didn't. We never found it. I mean, we might have found it in a few moments here and there, but neither one of us finished that race, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that we're going to have a terrible race the next time. Things did not go that way that day.
Yeah.
And we got to figure out how to get it all back.
I've had a ton of bad races and races where I've DNF'd. And there was a time when I said I would never DNF when I first started running. I was like, I'll never quit a race. But that's not a real expectation. You can't put that on yourself. You have to be.
Yeah, that's a very hard expectation to live up to. I don't care if it's a 50K or 100 miler. That's a hard expectation to live up to.
Yeah, so you just have to learn that line, I think. And I've done enough races where I know the line pretty well, and I know how hard I can push, and at least I think I do.
I think we've seen how hard Ron can push.
Yeah.
He was about the color of the East Coast Adventure sign, this gray part right here when he finished.
So I was looking through.
Pretty sure he was like charcoal gray.
I was looking through some of those pictures from the fort, and you can tell that Ron had been laying down because he has dirt all over his shoulder, leaves all down at here. Looks like he just laid straight down somewhere.
So Ron, you don't know this, but I actually asked Nick if he took any pictures of you because I wanted to see what you look like.
Oh gosh!
And Nick said, "No, man, I'm not going to do that." He said, "I didn't do that." I started to. He's like, but I felt bad, so I didn't take any pictures. I was like, you could at least took some for me, Nick.
When I start requesting like the worst pictures, Nick, and just let us have them.
All right, so let's move on to the last subject before we start questions here. So I see that you've already put a race on your list for 2024. And I love it because me and Matt have been talking about this race.
Yep.
And I think it's pretty awesome. I think it's going to be a huge inaugural race for this race director. And I've listened to their podcast a little bit to learn about them. They put on some good races. They put on a lot of adventure races.
Yes.
But it's called the Conquer, and it's in January in Georgia. And it's a race where whoever wins it wins the entire prize of the registration fees, which is basically $100 a runner,
and it's full.
Could be potentially up to $10,000.
Well, there's 100 people in it.
Yeah, there's some incentive there to run. Yeah, it's 100.
It's full now.
Yeah, it's full.
That 10,000 is on.
I barely got in actually. Because I was gonna sign up this weekend. But I checked last week, and there was only 3 spots open when I registered.
Oh, wow!
So I was like, click, because I wanted to. Yeah. As soon as I heard about that race, I wanted to do it.
Well, I think it's awesome. I think you're gonna do it. Represent pretty well there based on what we've already seen. So I think you'll push yourself to your limit, and that's all that matters. You're gonna give your best.
Yeah, I want to get out there and just be around in that environment and see how far everybody can go. It's always cool just to be around people like that are willing to put themselves through the ringer and just keep going.
I'll have to check. Depending on what the ECA family's got going on here, we may have to represent you a little bit, Ron. You need some crew, we might be able to help you.
See what we can do with that.
Well, I helped my buddy Sean at Barn Creek, and so he's kind of owes me one. So we might trade back, and
well, and we might make an appearance up there to help you for a little while. I'll
Absolutely.
see what I got going on. I would love to be able to help you, and we know several runners in here. I mean, it looks like a pretty strong field.
You got Luke, Jessica Hamilton, Brian Beal, Aaron Patrick.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. You picked a good race. I wanted to do it so bad, but it does not align with anything I'm trying to do next year. So I talked myself out of it. The only trail race I'm really doing next year is I'm going to try to get into Bob's. I want to run it with you.
Yes, come. Let's take it to Bob's. Bob has a special award if you go for 48 hours. So,
Oh, really?
So far, nobody's been able to get it.
Let's do it.
So hopefully I'm there and I can take us. I told Bob I want to go farther than that, but if we get there, then that'll be a good first step.
Oh, I would like to see two East Coast guys standing there side by side at the end. That'd be awesome.
That'd be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, I'm going to turn this over to Matt, and I'm hoping, I just have to say this because it's Matt, and he loses the list.
Got him.
But I tried to give him like a hint a minute ago, and maybe he got it. But we'll see if he's got the questions list ready for you.
Got him. So we got a few. The first one was when did you move to Tennessee? But I think we covered that. You moved here right after art school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like road or trail running better?
I like trail running better. In terms of races, for sure, trail running. But I don't mind getting out on the road.
He's pretty fast on the road. I've run a few races with him, and you see him at the beginning. And then if it's any kind of out and back, you might see him again. But other than that, it's at the finish.
You'll see him running back towards you.
Yeah, we did the Sweetwater half last year, and I'm like, hey, Ron, gone. Didn't see him again to the finish line. What did you run at the Sweetwater half last year?
I think 125 maybe. It wasn't my
Well, he wasn't that far ahead of me then, because I did it in 129 or something. So you okay, that makes me feel a little better.
There you go.
Yeah, but
it's a good solid time.
Ron probably ran another half marathon the next day.
Well, he probably did the loop twice, because evidently they skipped the loop at the beginning for some people. And David Black was out there making sure everybody was catching the loop on the second time. Yeah, he was like, did y'all run? I'm like, yeah, we ran this loop already. Evidently, somebody didn't run it or something. So he didn't seem very happy. What is your nutrition of choice for hydration and food?
I kind of mix it up. I don't really have anything I particularly rely on. I've done Tailwind before. I think we did Voice before. Even Gatorade's okay. It just kind of, I'm sort of trained myself to not have to take on a lot. So I can run on my daily runs, I usually don't take anything. So I'm used to running for 10 or 13 miles without needing any real nutrition. So bars are good for me. I try to stay away from the gels because they don't always sit in my stomach well. So bars are good, and real food for ultras.
Okay. What would you say is your hardest race that you've done?
Well, it really depends on how hard you want to push yourself. So there's been some races that are probably easy, but it's me. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like it's all about effort. Yep. But for you, what was your hardest?
Yeah, so hardest race in terms of the course. Well, there's also like difficulty in a race, and I did Eastern States a while back, and I would say that's probably the most difficult course in terms of terrain. Tennessee Miles probably one of the hardest in terms of like just elevation, like going up when your nose is scraping the trail you're running up.
When you can just touch the hill with your hand.
Yeah, literally put your hand out, it's right there. Yeah, it is just straight up. In terms of road races, Whitestone 30K. So if you want a hard race, go run Whitestone 30K as hard as you can. And you will be regretting life very quickly because it is hilly and it's like 18 miles, so it's just far enough to be not quite a marathon, but you're running on these hills, so you have to run a little bit faster than you would a marathon. But yeah, that's a pretty tough race.
Unfortunately, we'll never get to run that race because we're in charge of the trail race
aid
station. We have to run the aid station for KTC. They like our party zone there.
Yes. I always think about doing a trail race.
I was gonna say, if you do the road race, you should just come hang out with us.
Oh, he'll be done. He'll be done.
All kinds of fun.
He'll be done fast enough, so he could run on over and hang out with us.
Absolutely.
What is your fastest 50K?
So it was the 2021. So I set my marathon PR, and then well, it technically wasn't a 50K because he added 5K onto the course. So thanks a lot, Jason. Really appreciate you there, bud. Because I thought that was just like a marketing thing when I signed up for the race. Until like 2 days before I looked, I was like 55. Maybe he did change it. And so yeah, there's literally an extra 3.1 miles added on from the first year I did it to the second.
Yeah, man, that's moving.
I went through
3 hours and 39 minutes.
Yeah, I went through the 50K mark in, I think, 3:20, something like that.
Well, there goes my marathon time. So what was your first 100? I would assume that would be Thunder Rock.
Yeah, Thunder Rock. And I said I would never do 100. I said, after I did my first 100K, they said, we think, so a few people were talking, they're like, we think you're probably ready to do 100 miles. And I was like, I'm never doing 100 miles. I will never run 100 miles ever. Forget it.
I think he's got 15 of them now.
Yeah, well, and then now he's running 170 miles at Bob's. So.
Yeah. Can you put into words what it meant to finish your first 100 miler?
Yeah, it was one of the greatest experiences that I've had in running, for sure. Just in terms of being out on the course and running trails and just being out in nature, feeling that. Yeah. Going up the mountains and that accomplishment of getting to that distance on that kind of terrain is definitely just a huge accomplishment for me and a great experience.
And let's see here. Have you done any out west races?
Nope. Never have. Western States was one I wanted to do, but had a string of just bad 100 miles where it just didn't work out year after year. It just seemed like either I would be injured or something would happen or I'd sprain my ankle in a race. And yeah, so my qualifiers all got wiped away. That was before they changed the rules.
He will be running Badwater at some point, so we'll have to come back.
Yes, I will run Badwater one day. Yeah.
And what is your next race? And I guess that would be the Conquer.
Well, Tennessee Mile. So I'm gonna do.
See, it's not on his thing.
Oh, it's not on here.
I didn't sign up yet. I gotta do that. I gotta do that tonight.
He has been talking about it. He's
that's true. I think you did post something on the Dirt and Vert page, so that's awesome. Yeah, because you'll probably be down there with a couple of East Coast adventures.
He'll be down there with Dusty and Cindy and Micah and Marcia, and it's gonna be a big ECA party.
Y'all will be representing well.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
I've got one last question I'm going to end this podcast with. And Matt, I think we should make this the question going forward that we end the podcast with.
Let me write this down then. Let me write it down so we don't lose it or you don't forget it.
Okay.
But what is your why? Why do you run?
Well, I think just, you could say for fitness, you could say a million different things, but for me, it's just about seeing what I can get out of myself, and it's the perfect venue for that, for pushing your body and your mind at the same time.
No, I completely see that, and a lot of us get into running for other reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Something in our life may happen, or but either way, we get into running, and all of a sudden we find this addiction for it, and it's back to your very first half marathon, and it's I think I can do better. Well, that I think I could do better turns into how far can I push myself, and So I completely see that. I completely understand what you said, and I think that's a great why. It's just so interesting to me to understand why some people run. So I love asking that question, and great answer, Ron. I mean, I get it. I'm kind of that same way. I like to push myself to see what I can do, and I think that's why we all kind of stay in this sport, because you have to like to suffer just a little bit to continue to do this.
You pay to suffer. You pay a lot of money for a lot of races to go suffer.
Yeah, you could go with the Steve Prefontaine quote. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. So
that was my senior quote.
You go.
It was.
That's an awesome quote too. I love it. Well, Ron, thank you so much for being on the Dirt and Vert podcast. Enjoyed it, dude. This is actually probably the longest podcast we've recorded, but it doesn't
awesome feel like
it
was
is our
36
official
minutes.
10th podcast.
10. All right. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like we've been going for an hour and 36 minutes.
No, it doesn't.
Like I said, once I start talking, I don't know. It's like running. I just keep going.
Well, Ron, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hanging with you guys, putting in some miles.
Yes, sir.
Can't wait.